Welcome to my channel. Subscribe and enjoy my new stories every day. It started innocently enough, a routine trip during a vacation in North Carolina. My wife, Megan, and I had been married for 9 years, and while things weren't always perfect, we were solid, or so I thought. We were heading to a cabin in the mountains for a long weekend. I had been looking forward to it for weeks. The break from work, the time alone together, it all felt like exactly what we needed. On the way, Megan asked if we could make a quick stop. She needed to use the bathroom, and the next rest area was too far away. We pulled off at a Wawa, and she rushed inside. I stayed in the car, scrolling through my phone, oblivious to anything strange. But then, Megan's phone lit up on the passenger seat beside me. At first, I didn't pay attention. She had left it behind in her hurry to get inside, which wasn't unusual. Megan wasn't particularly glued to her phone like most people were these days. But then it buzzed again. And again. I glanced at the screen, more out of curiosity than suspicion. The messages were from a number without a name attached, just a Virginia area code, and they weren't the kind of messages you'd expect to see from a work colleague or a friend. "Can't wait to see you again tomorrow, baby." I froze, my heart immediately pounding in my chest. I stared at the message, trying to process what I had just seen. Tomorrow. We were on vacation for the next 4 days, and the plan didn't involve anyone else. As I stared at her phone, I was so focused on the messages that I didn't hear the door open. Megan came out of the Wawa, her face flushed as she walked toward the car. But when she saw her phone in my hand, everything changed. She ran. Megan was sprinting across the parking lot back toward the convenience store, and it caught me off guard. I could only sit there, stunned, wondering what could be so important that she would literally run away from me to retrieve her phone. She yanked it out of my hand as soon as she reached the car and, without a word, turned and dashed back inside, leaving me sitting there in silence. That was the moment I knew something wasn't right. I didn't confront her immediately. Instead, I just waited, my mind spinning. My gut told me that this wasn't some random message or harmless mistake. I wasn't ready to start an argument, not while we were on vacation. But my mind kept replaying the scene over and over. Her sprinting. The panicked look on her face when she saw me with her phone. When she returned to the car a few minutes later, her demeanor had completely changed. She was calm, maybe even a little too calm. She smiled at me as if nothing had happened. "Sorry," she said breezily. "I had to grab something I forgot." I didn't say anything. I just nodded, but inside, everything felt different. Something had shifted between us, and I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling. The rest of the drive to the cabin was filled with silence, save for the occasional small talk about the scenery or our plans for the weekend. But I wasn't really listening. I was too busy trying to figure out what to do next. Should I confront her now? Should I wait? The doubt gnawed at me, but I stayed quiet, deciding to gather more information before making any rash decisions. The first night at the cabin was awkward. Megan spent a lot of time on her phone, which wasn't like her. We had always been the kind of couple who enjoyed each other's company on vacations, unplugging from work and technology to reconnect. But not this time. I could see her typing away, glancing up at me every once in a while, her face masked with a forced smile. It felt like there was a wall between us, something I had never noticed before. Something had changed. The next morning, I decided to take a different approach. Instead of letting my emotions take over, I thought it might be better to wait until we were back from the trip. I needed more proof. One suspicious message wasn't enough to confront her with. So, I played it cool. We went hiking, visited a few local spots, and even managed to enjoy a dinner in town. Megan seemed to relax a little more, but she never fully put her phone away. It was always in her hand, her eyes glued to the screen whenever she thought I wasn't paying attention. That night, after Megan had gone to bed, I quietly slipped out of the room and grabbed my laptop. I had seen enough spy movies to know what to do next. I logged into our shared phone account, pulling up the call logs and text history for the last month. And there it was, dozens of texts and calls to that same number, the one with the Virginia area code. They had been in constant communication, almost daily, for weeks. My heart sank. The reality of the situation started to sink in. This wasn't just some random message or misunderstanding. My wife was having an affair, and I had the evidence right in front of me. I wanted to storm into the bedroom and confront her right then, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the years of marriage, the history we shared, or the fact that part of me was still in shock. Instead, I closed the laptop, deciding to keep playing the role of the oblivious husband for a little longer. I needed more than just a phone log to bring this all crashing down. The next morning, we packed up and headed home. The tension was palpable, but Megan either didn't notice or was pretending not to. I was amazed at how well she was able to act like everything was fine, how she could smile and laugh as if nothing had changed. But I couldn't look at her the same way anymore. Back home, I kept digging. I searched through old messages, receipts, anything that could give me more clues. And what I found only confirmed my worst fears. Megan had been seeing someone else for months, meeting up with him whenever she claimed she had work or was staying late at the office. I knew then that the marriage was over. There was no coming back from this. But before I could file for divorce, I wanted to make sure she felt the same kind of betrayal and devastation that I did. Revenge wasn't something I had ever considered before, but now, it felt like the only option. I wasn't going to just leave quietly. No, she was going to feel every bit of the pain she had caused me. After discovering the extent of Megan's affair, I felt numb. It was like everything I had known about my marriage had been a lie, a facade she had carefully constructed while living a double life. But instead of confronting her right away, I bided my time. I couldn't explode in a fit of rage, it wasn't my style. I wanted something more precise, something that would truly expose her and make her understand just how badly she had destroyed our relationship. I kept my daily routine, going to work and pretending things were normal at home, but inside, I was a ticking time bomb. I knew exactly what I needed to do. Over the next few days, I started planning. First, I gathered every piece of evidence I had, text logs, emails, and even the receipts I'd found in her car from restaurants I knew she hadn't visited with me. I wasn't just going to throw it in her face, I needed a plan that would ensure she wouldn't walk away from this unscathed. I wanted to hit her where it hurt the most, her reputation. Megan was always so concerned about what people thought of her. She had cultivated this image of the perfect wife, loyal, hardworking, the woman who had it all. Our friends often joked that we were the ideal couple, and I knew how much Megan basked in that admiration. She was proud of it. So, I decided to turn that image upside down. My first move was to contact her family. Megan's parents adored me, they had always treated me like the son they never had. Her father and I bonded over football, and her mother would always make extra effort to include me in family gatherings. They were traditional, conservative people who had always held our marriage in high regard. One evening, I sat down and wrote a carefully crafted email to them, attaching some of the evidence I had found. Nothing too explicit, but just enough to get my point across. I told them I was heartbroken, that I had tried everything to make the marriage work, but Megan had betrayed me in the worst way possible. I played the part of the devastated husband perfectly, and I knew that once they read that email, their relationship with Megan would never be the same. Her father was particularly old school, infidelity was something he would never forgive. After hitting send, I felt a wave of satisfaction. But it wasn't enough. Megan had friends who idolized her, women she worked with and socialized with who would be just as shocked as her family to learn about the affair. So, I expanded my efforts. I sent out similar messages to a few of her closest friends, keeping the tone sorrowful, like I was just a broken man trying to make sense of my wife's actions. It wasn't long before the responses started pouring in. Megan's mother was the first to reply. Her email was a mix of shock, confusion, and sorrow. She couldn't believe what she was reading. Her father followed up shortly after, much more blunt in his response. He was furious. He couldn't believe that Megan, his little girl, would do something like this. I imagined their disappointment in her, and it gave me a dark sense of satisfaction. As expected, her friends were just as horrified. They offered me their condolences, saying they couldn't believe Megan was capable of such betrayal. Some of them expressed anger, and one even said she felt sick thinking about how Megan had fooled all of them. With each new response, I felt a small piece of my broken heart heal. But the biggest part of my plan was still in motion. Megan was completely oblivious to the storm that was about to hit her. She carried on with her usual routine, still glued to her phone, still texting her lover as if nothing had changed. It amazed me how easily she could live this lie, but I knew it was all about to come crashing down. The turning point came the following weekend, at a barbecue we were hosting for a few friends and family. Megan had been the one to suggest it weeks earlier, and now it was the perfect opportunity to expose her. I played along, helping her set up the backyard, preparing the grill, and greeting guests with a smile. But inside, I was bracing for what was about to unfold. Megan's parents arrived first, and I could tell immediately that something was off. Her father wouldn't make eye contact with her, and her mother seemed distant, barely acknowledging Megan's attempts to make conversation. Megan noticed, too. She kept glancing at me, confused, but I just shrugged it off, pretending like everything was fine. As more guests arrived, the tension grew. Megan's friends, the ones I had contacted, showed up with tight-lipped smiles and awkward hugs. I could see the whispers, the sideways glances. Megan could feel it too. By the time we sat down to eat, she was visibly uncomfortable, fidgeting in her seat, glancing around like she was trying to figure out what was going on. It wasn't long before someone finally broke the silence. One of her closest friends, Lisa, couldn't hold it in any longer. She looked straight at Megan and said, "How could you do this to him?" Megan froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice shaking. Lisa wasn't one to beat around the bush. "We all know, Megan. We know about the affair." The words hung in the air like a bomb that had just been dropped. The table went dead silent. Everyone was staring at Megan, waiting for her to respond. I could see the panic in her eyes, the way she was scrambling to come up with an excuse, a way out of the situation. She looked at me, her face pale. "Is this true?" she whispered, like she couldn't believe I had told everyone. I leaned back in my chair, taking a slow sip of my drink before answering. "I didn't say a word, Megan. The truth has a way of coming out on its own." Megan stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the ground. She stammered something about needing a minute, then rushed into the house, leaving everyone in stunned silence. I could feel the eyes of everyone at the table on me, waiting to see what I would do next. But I didn't move. I sat there calmly, letting the weight of the moment settle in. Megan had run away, but there was no escaping the consequences of her actions now. Inside, I heard a door slam. I imagined her pacing the kitchen, frantically trying to figure out how to salvage the situation. But there was nothing she could do. The truth was out, and she had been exposed for the liar she was. I stood up, pushing my chair back slowly. "Thank you all for coming," I said, my voice steady. "I think it's time we called it a night." One by one, our guests gathered their things, offering awkward goodbyes as they filtered out of the house. Megan didn't come back outside. She stayed hidden, probably hoping that if she stayed quiet long enough, it would all go away. But I knew better. That night, after everyone was gone, I found Megan sitting in the dark kitchen, her face red and streaked with tears. I sat down across from her, the same way I had when I first found the messages. "I can't believe you did this," she said, her voice hoarse. "You did this to yourself," I replied coldly. She looked at me, defeated, broken in a way I had never seen before. And for the first time, I didn't feel an ounce of sympathy for her. This was the revenge I had wanted, and now that it was unfolding, it was more satisfying than I could have imagined. Tomorrow, I would file for divorce. But tonight, I would let her sit in her misery, just as she had let me sit in mine for months. After the chaotic barbecue and the devastating confrontation, Megan barely spoke to me. The silence between us was like a thick fog that permeated every corner of our house. She had retreated into herself, hollow and fragile, and I wasn't about to break that silence. Let her stew in it, I thought. Let her feel what it's like to be suffocated by betrayal. Every time I looked at her, I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. The next few days were strange. We still went about our usual routines, getting up, going to work, eating dinner at the same table, but we didn't talk, not about the affair, not about what had happened at the barbecue. It was like we were two strangers living in the same house, going through the motions of a dead marriage. Megan's phone was no longer glued to her hand. I noticed she had stopped texting so much, and every now and then, I caught her glancing at me, as if she was waiting for something, for me to bring it up again, to have a fight, or to let her back in. But I wasn't going to give her that. On the third day, I decided it was time to make the next move. The divorce papers were ready. I had filed them the morning after the barbecue, and now it was just a matter of having her sign them. But I wasn't going to do it quietly. If Megan wanted to shatter our marriage, she was going to have to face the full consequences. I needed her to understand that she had destroyed everything. That evening, when I got home from work, Megan was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at her laptop. She barely looked up as I entered, her fingers tapping nervously on the edge of the keyboard. I knew she could feel the tension building. I walked past her, grabbed a beer from the fridge, and sat down across from her, sliding a manila envelope across the table. "What's this?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. I didn't respond immediately. I took a slow sip of my beer, watching her. Finally, I said, "Divorce papers." Her face went pale, and her hands stopped tapping the keyboard. She didn't reach for the envelope. She just sat there, staring at it like it was a bomb waiting to go off. "Divorce?" she said, her voice